I was locking up my office just after 8:30 last Thursday night, when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "She's not alone," it said. No name, no context. Just those 3 words. I thought it was a mistake, until the second message came. "Your sister asked for you. Don't tell your manager." I stared at that second message for a long time, longer than I should have, because something in my chest tightened the way it does when a memory you've tried to bury suddenly claws its way back. My sister Elaine hadn't asked for me in months. Not because we were fighting exactly, but because she'd been drifting, pulling away from the family, missing birthdays, skipping holidays, giving these vague explanations that never felt quite honest. So seeing her name, even indirectly, hit me like a cold hand on the back of my neck. I typed back, "Who is this?" and waited. Nothing, not even the little dots that show someone is typing. Just silence, thick and strange. I should have gone home. It was late, the building was empty, and my manager Harold had already lectured me twice that week about staying past hours. "Budgeting lights," he'd said. "Energy waste," he said. Nonsense. Things like that, when what he really meant was he didn't like not being in control. But something nudged me, quiet, insistent. So instead of heading for the elevator, I walked back through the hallway, past the framed certifications Harold insisted we all admire weekly, and toward my office. My keys jingled in my hand. My palm was sweating. I unlocked my door, pushed it open, and froze. My sister was there, standing by the window. Her hair was pulled back, and her coat was draped over one arm like she hadn't planned to stay long. She didn't look surprised to see me, which was the first thing that made my stomach drop. She looked prepared, like she'd been waiting for exactly this moment. "You took your time," she said. Her voice was steady, but something about it felt scraped thin, like she'd been holding herself together by sheer force. "Elaine," I stepped inside slowly. "What are you doing here? Who texted me?" She didn't answer that. Instead, she glanced toward the hall, closed the door. When I hesitated, she added, "Please." That one word, too soft, too unfamiliar, convinced me. I shut the door, listening to the latch click into place, and something in the air shifted. She looked at me, and I realized her eyes were tired in a way I'd never seen before. Not worn out tired, not long day tired. This was something deeper, something like fear. Before I could ask anything else, another voice spoke from behind me. "I told her you'd come back." I turned. Harold was standing in the doorway of his office across the hall, watching us. He didn't smile, but there was something smug in the way he leaned against the frame, like he was waiting to see a reaction he'd been predicting. "Family reunions," he said lightly. "Always interesting." "Harold," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "What's going on? Why is my sister here? And why do you have her in my office after hours?" He shrugged. "She asked for a private room to speak with you. I didn't ask questions." He paused, eyes flicking to Elaine. Though maybe I should have. Something in his tone made her flinch. He noticed. Of course, he noticed. Harold always noticed anything that could give him leverage. "Don't start," she muttered, under her breath. I stepped between them. "Elaine, talk to me. What's happening?" She looked at Harold again. Not angry, not resentful, but cautious, like she didn't want him hearing something. Then she took a slow breath. "Can we sit?" she asked. "This is going to sound strange, and I need you to listen before you react." "When have I not listened to you?" I asked. "Plenty of times," she said quietly, "but I'm hoping this time will be different." We sat on either side of my desk. Harold made no attempt to leave the hallway. I could see his shadow through the glass. I reached toward the blinds to close them, but Elaine's hand shot out. "No," she whispered. "Keep them open." When I raised my eyebrows, she added, "If something happens, I want to be seen." That chilled me more than the text message. "Elaine," I said. Are you in trouble? She let out a shaky breath. I think so. You think? I tried to keep my tone soft, but the words came out sharper than I intended. Are you in danger? She pressed her lips together, then opened her coat. Inside, tucked into a concealed pocket, was a slim manila folder. She slid it onto the desk between us. I need you to read this, she said. But you can't read it here. Not now. Not while he's around. Through the glass, I saw Harold pretend to check something on his phone. Pretend he was listening. What is it? I whispered. My manager, she said. Not him. My manager at the bank. He's been having me pull documents, files that don't match our systems, transactions that look legitimate but aren't. And yesterday, her voice cracked. She wiped her eyes, frustrated. Yesterday, he told me I needed to approve something illegal, and when I said I wouldn't, he told me I'd regret it. I felt a pulse of anger surge up. Why didn't you call the police? I tried. She swallowed. They told me they'd look into it. That was it. And this morning, someone was outside my apartment, just standing there, watching. She let out a shuddering breath. I don't know if it's connected, but it felt like it. I leaned back slowly. So you came here. Why here? Why me? Because you work for a company that audits financial institutions, she whispered. You have access to things I don't. And because... She hesitated. Because you're my brother, and Harold said. What did he say? I interrupted. She looked down at her hands. He said you'd know what to do. I stared at her, then at Harold's shadow in the hall. Harold told you that. She nodded. He said, you'd help. He said you always help. I didn't know whether to be relieved or suspicious. Harold wasn't the type to advocate for emotional solidarity. If he'd encouraged her to come to me, there had to be a reason, and not necessarily a good one. Just then, Harold opened my office door without knocking. Everything okay in here? He asked. He didn't step inside. He stayed planted in the doorway like a living wedge. You two seem tense. My sister had a long day, I said. We're talking, that's all. Moon. He eyed the manila folder. Sensitive material? That's none of your concern, I said. His eyes flicked to Elaine again. Something passed between them, something neither of them said aloud. Then he tapped the doorframe lightly. Well, don't stay too late, you know the policy. He waited a beat, then added, and don't forget to lock up. He closed the door but didn't walk away immediately. His shadow lingered, listening. Elaine exhaled when his footsteps finally faded. He's been different, she whispered. Your manager. He asked me questions before you arrived. I didn't answer, but I think he knows something. Something he's not telling us. Like what? She glanced toward the door, then back at me. Like why those documents ended up in my hands, and why someone texted you instead of me. My phone buzzed again. I looked down. Unknown number. He knows she's talking. My heart thudded once. Hard. Elaine leaned in. What does it say? I swallowed. We need to leave, I said quietly. Right now. She nodded. And that's when the building lights flickered, then went out. When the lights snapped off, it didn't go completely dark. Emergency strips along the floor hummed faintly to life, but the sudden shift was enough to send a jolt through both of us. Elaine grabbed the edge of my desk. They cut the power, she whispered. Her voice sounded too loud in the strange half-light, even though she barely spoke above a breath. I reached for my phone again, but the screen stayed black. Battery dead. It had been at 40% 15 minutes earlier. It's the breaker, I said automatically. Though I didn't believe it. Our building was old, yes, but the emergency system usually kicked on in under a second. This flicker had been longer. Almost intentional. The building loses power sometimes. Elaine shook her head. No, not like this. I took her arm gently. We're getting out of here. Right now. We stepped toward the door when it opened suddenly, so fast that Elaine jumped back. But it wasn't Harold. It was Marcus, the janitor. He was holding a small flashlight, the beam jittering across the floor as he walked. "Thought you two might still be here," he said. Marcus was usually cheerful, the kind of man who stopped to ask about your weekend even on a Monday morning, but right now, his voice felt clipped, tense, as if he was trying to keep it steady. "Power's out on this whole side." "Do you know what caused it?" I asked. He shook his head, glancing down the hallway. "Breaker in the sub-panel tripped." But he hesitated. "Someone pulled it." Elaine tensed. "Someone?" He nodded slowly, then leaned closer and dropped his voice. "I checked the cameras by the stairwell. Somebody unplugged them just before it happened. That's not a routine outage." He swung the flashlight toward my office. "You two should get going. Elevator's down. But stairs are fine." I looked at Elaine. "Come on." But Marcus didn't move away. He kept the flashlight angled toward the far end of the hall. "Your manager went upstairs a few minutes before the lights cut," he said. Didn't say why. Elaine's fingers clutched my sleeve. "Upstairs where?" Marcus hesitated. "Roof access." That made no sense. Harold barely walked the extra distance to the parking lot on a normal day, let alone climb to the roof in the dark. "Why would he go up there?" I asked. Marcus's jaw flexed. The only sign he was frustrated. That's what I'd like to know. I felt a knot of unease tighten under my ribs. "Let's just go. We can figure this out outside." We stepped into the hallway. Marcus pointed the flashlight ahead, but kept looking behind us like he expected someone to appear. "You two go first," he said. "I'll stay behind you," Elaine whispered. "Why?" Marcus's answer was simple. "Because whoever pulled that breaker is still in the building." We moved quickly but quietly, passing office doors and the frosted windows of conference rooms that looked unfamiliar without overhead lights. The exit sign at the end of the hallway glowed a dull red, but as we reached it, I felt the presence before I saw it. The subtle shift in air, the faint sound of someone breathing just out of sight. Marcus lifted the flashlight higher. Harold stepped into the corridor. "Going somewhere?" he asked. His voice was calm, too calm. Elaine slipped behind me. Marcus angled the flashlight but didn't lower it. "Harold," I said carefully. "The lights are out. We're heading downstairs." He nodded once, choosing his words too slowly. "Power failure happens." Then he glanced at Marcus. "Though I suppose you already know that." Marcus didn't answer. Neither did I. Harold's gaze returned to me. "You left your office door unlocked." "That's not really. You're usually more careful," he said quietly. "But I guess tonight is full of surprises." Elaine's breathing turned shallow. I could hear it behind me like small, panicked bursts. Harold looked directly at her, then. "You found him," he said. "Good." Something in his tone made every muscle in my back tighten. "What is that supposed to mean?" He ignored me. "Elaine," he said, "you should tell your brother why you really came here." She stiffened. "I already told him." "No," Harold said softly. "Not the real reason." I stepped closer to him. "Enough. Move." He looked at me with a strange weariness. "I tried to keep you out of it, both of you. But she dragged you in as soon as she walked through your door." Elaine shook her head. You didn't tell him about the phone call," Harold said quietly. I turned. "What phone call?" Elaine's face drained of color. Harold lifted one eyebrow. "You didn't tell him someone threatened you at the bank before you left. Told you to retrieve the file personally, bring it here and meet him in this building." "What?" I whispered. Elaine's lips trembled. "I didn't want you involved." "You're already involved," Harold said. "You always were." Marcus shifted beside me. "Harold, step back." Harold ignored him. He took one slow step forward. "Just one. Look at the folder she gave you," he said to me. "You think she pulled those files herself? You think someone like her had the clearance?" Someone else put them in her hands, and she didn't walk into your office tonight, by coincidence. She was led. Elaine's breath hitched. Stop. You know it's true, he said softly. I stared at her. Elaine, is that true? She swallowed hard. I didn't know who else to turn to. That's not an answer, I said. Harold stepped nearer again, but Marcus blocked him with his arm. Stay where you are. Harold studied him, then let out a small sigh. This is pointless. You don't know enough to make sense of any of it. Then he looked at me. But they do. They? I asked. I heard the sound before I saw anything. Footsteps on the stairwell, heavy ones. Several. Elaine grabbed my arm. We need to go. Marcus turned the flashlight toward the stairwell door. Back to your office, he whispered urgently. Now, we all moved. It wasn't running, not yet, but close to it. As soon as we reached my office, Marcus shut the door. Harold was still in the hallway, staring at us like he was watching a poorly rehearsed play. Lock it, Marcus said. I did. The voices in the stairwell grew clearer. Male voices. At least 3, maybe more. Elaine pressed her hands to her face. This is my fault, she whispered. I didn't think they'd follow me here. Who? I asked. Elaine, who is after you. She lowered her hands slowly, eyes red and wide. The man who called, she whispered. He told me he wanted proof. Financial proof that what the bank was doing was real. He said he had someone on the inside here. Someone who would help. I stared at her. Inside here? In my office? She shook her head. Not your office. Your building. I felt the back of my neck go cold. Who? Silence. Then a voice from the hall, deep, unfamiliar, called out, Open the door. Elaine's breath broke. Marcus put his hand on the light switch panel even though it was dead, like he needed something to brace on. We're not opening anything, he called back. Another voice replied. Not the same one. Younger, sharper. Harold said you'd cooperate. All 3 of us stared at the door. Harold. He'd vanished from the hallway. Elaine whispered. He set us up. The doorknob turned. Not violently, slowly. A deliberate warning. I reached for the manila folder on my desk. Because if they wanted it, then it mattered more than anything Elaine had told me so far. The voice on the other side of the door spoke again. We just want the file. Elaine looked at me, eyes trembling. You can't give it to them. Then what do they want? Behind her, Marcus glanced at the second exit, an old maintenance door that connected to the internal supply corridor, out the back. He whispered, It doesn't latch from this side, but it opens. The doorknob turned again. Go, Marcus said. I opened the maintenance door. Elaine slipped through. I followed, and this time the lights didn't flicker. They died completely. The maintenance corridor swallowed us in a darkness so complete. It felt physical, like stepping into ink. I reached back instinctively, expecting Marcus to follow, but the door thudded closed behind us before my hand found him. Marcus, I whispered. From the other side, his voice came through, low and urgent. Go, don't stop, I'll stall them. Then a second voice, one of the men, cut him off, and something heavy slammed against the office door. Elaine clutched my arm. He shouldn't stay there alone. He knows the building better than any of us. I whispered. He'll find a way out. But I didn't believe it. Not fully. I reached for Elaine's hand. Stay close. Don't let go. She didn't hesitate. Her fingers locked around mine, cold, trembling. The corridor was narrow, lined with old metal shelves, loaded with dusty binders, cleaning supplies, and cardboard boxes crumbling at the corners. The emergency lights didn't reach this far. We had nothing, not even a phone's glow, to guide us, except the faint draft against my cheek, telling me we were heading toward the back stairwell. Footsteps echoed behind the office wall. Voices, a crack as something splintered. Elaine clung tighter. They're going to break through. They will. I said. "But we'll be gone before they try this door." At least I hoped so. I moved forward slowly, one hand sliding along the wall to stay oriented. After maybe 20 paces, my fingers brushed something metallic, the handle of a cart shoved partially into the walkway. I whispered, "Careful." Too late. Elaine's shin hit the bottom rung with a muffled thud. She sucked in a sharp breath, but didn't cry out. "You okay?" She nodded, though I couldn't see the motion. "Keep going, please." We moved around it, inching forward. Then, behind us, the maintenance door's old hinges screeched. I froze. A wedge of faint gray light pierced the darkness, outlining tall shapes entering the corridor. Elaine stiffened against my back. A man's voice, calm, matter-of-fact, spoke softly. "There's nowhere to go. Just hand over the file." I felt Elaine's breath shake against my shoulder. He continued, "Let's not make this difficult." I leaned close to her ear. "Move, quietly." We slipped deeper into the corridor before the full light from the office could expose us. The men didn't push forward immediately. They were trying to listen, trying to track us by sound. The faint draft guided me right. I found the corner with my fingertips and eased us around it. The change in airflow told me the back stairwell was close. Maybe 10 more feet. But something was wrong. No stairwell should be this cold. We walked a few more steps. My hand found the heavy door, cool, metal, industrial. I pushed. It didn't budge. Locked. Elaine tugged my sleeve. "Why isn't it opening? It should." I tried again. Silently, pressing my shoulder to it. Nothing. Another slam echoed from the far end of the corridor. They were testing their orientation, seeing if our movement gave us away. I tested the push bar again with the heel of my hand. Dead, jammed from the other side. Elaine's voice cracked. "What do we do?" I forced myself to breathe evenly. Panic would kill us faster than they would. "There's another route. The storage annex. That's halfway back toward them. It also connects to the freight elevator shaft. Wide if we can get into it." A sharp clatter behind us cut me off. Metal against concrete. They were closing in. I pulled Elaine faster, retracing our steps but sticking to the opposite wall. If they'd seen even a silhouette against the office light, they would expect us to stay along the right side. So we stayed on the left. As we slid past another shelf, a low hum shivered through the floor. Elaine whispered, "What was that?" The power grid trying to reset. Maybe, or maybe something else. Something worse. When we reached the next turn, I paused and listened. Silence. Then, the faint, rhythmic clicking. Footsteps, carefully matching our pace. Tracking us by sound, I moved quicker. Breath tight in my chest. Just before the annex's entrance, my foot hit empty space instead of concrete, and I stumbled forward. A step down. The threshold. I caught myself on a stack of crates and pulled Elaine with me. "This way," I whispered. The annex smelled different, like old paint, dust, and the metallic tang of forgotten machinery. The air was colder here, the kind of deep, unused cold found in storage rooms. No one visits unless something's broken. I pushed the door inward, wincing as the hinges groaned. We slipped inside. The darkness swallowed us again. From the corridor behind us, one of the men spoke quietly. "They turned," he said. "Left side." He knew. Elaine pressed against me, shivering. "How?" "They're listening," I whispered. Every sound, I leaned close to her ear. "We need to stay completely still." We froze. The footsteps grew closer, sweeping the corridor with slow precision. 1, 2, 3. They paused just outside the annex. I felt Elaine tense, muscles coiling as if preparing to run. I squeezed her hand. "Don't." The men stood there for what felt like a full minute. Then a hand brushed the annex door. It creaked open another inch. Elaine's fingers dug into my arm. But then, voices, faint, distant, echoed from the far end of the main hallway. A loud crash. A shout, something heavy overturning. The men turned. "Go," one ordered. Their footsteps retreated rapidly, heading toward the sound. Elaine whispered, "Was that Marcus?" I exhaled slowly. Maybe, but deep down, I knew that wasn't Marcus's voice. Too loud, too aggressive. Someone else was in the building, pulled her deeper into the annex. This room was larger than the corridor, shallow rows of metal racks, coils of old wiring, boxes stacked to the ceiling. My hands swept the right wall until I found what I was searching for, a steel panel covering the old freight shaft access. "If this opens," I whispered, "we can get to the basement. And then out? Maybe, or at least away from them." I slipped my fingers into the panel's edge. It resisted, stiff with old paint. I pulled harder, joints in my wrist flaring with pain. At last it cracked open. Cold air washed over us. Damp, stale, rising from the hollow shaft below. Elaine peered into the darkness. "How far down is it?" "3 floors." Her breath hitched. "Is there a ladder?" "Yes," I said. There was. I just didn't know if it was intact. But we had no choice. Voices echoed again. "Closer this time." They doubled back. I whispered, "We have to go now." Elaine nodded, fear tightening her jaw. I lowered myself first, testing the metal rung. It held. "Come on." She followed, her hand gripping mine so tightly my fingers went numb. We descended into the shaft, step by careful step, swallowed by the darkness beneath the building. Above us, the annex door opened. A beam of light swept the room, and a voice, calm, unmistakable, called down the shaft. "You can't run from this, Harold." He'd found us again. Harold's voice echoed down the shaft, with a calmness that didn't match the situation. It floated through the darkness like he was speaking from the doorway of a quiet living room, not the edge of a gaping metal pit. "You can't run from this," he repeated. Slower this time. Elaine froze above me, fingers tightening around the ladder rung. I could feel her tremble through the metal. He leaned closer. I could hear it in the shift of his voice. "Elaine, you know I don't want to hurt you. Just give me the file." She swallowed hard. "Don't answer him," I whispered up to her, my voice barely a breath. Harold continued anyway. Conversational and steady. "Daniel? Is that you down there too? I suspected as much. You always did stick your nose where it didn't belong." I didn't look up. I didn't want him to hear the rattle in my breath. Elaine's whisper drifted faintly down to me. "Why is he doing this?" "I'll explain later," I whispered. "Just keep moving." But she didn't. She hesitated, caught between panic and the weight of everything she still hadn't said. Betrayal sighed. "You know this could be easier. You're walking into a dead end." Literally, a metallic creak. He was stepping onto the ladder. I felt it vibrate beneath my hands. "He's coming down," I whispered sharply. "Elaine, move!" That snapped her out of it. She began climbing faster, her feet hitting the rungs with a quiet urgency. I followed, trying to keep us steady without shaking the ladder too much. My hand brushed a rusted bolt. The metal beneath my palm felt gritty and too cold, like it hadn't been touched in years. In the silence of the shaft, Harold's descent sounded deliberate, not hurried, not reckless, just patient, controlled. The worst kind of pursuit. We reached the first landing, a narrow metal grate jutting from the side of the shaft. The dim emergency light from the basement flickered through cracks in the grate below. Elaine stepped onto it, and the entire platform groaned under her weight. "Is it safe?" she whispered. "No," I said, "but it's all we've got. Move to the far side." She did, inching toward the access door on the platform's left wall. I followed her, keeping one hand stretched behind me to steady the ladder so Harold wouldn't feel the shift. He was maybe 10 rungs above us now. I reached the access door and gripped the handle. It stuck. The frame was warped, probably from moisture, maybe from years of no maintenance. Elaine touched my arm. "Can you open it?" "I'm trying." I leaned my shoulder into it, pushing steadily to avoid making noise. "Nothing." Harold's voice echoed closer. "That landing won't hold 3 people." Elaine's breathing hitched. "Daniel," Harold said calmly, "step away from the door. You'll get your sister hurt." I gritted my teeth and pushed harder. The metal resisted for a moment. Then the frame gave slightly, and the door shifted a fraction of an inch. I stopped breathing. "Again," Elaine whispered. I braced my hands, inhaled, and shoved with everything I had. The door burst open with a sudden metallic crack that echoed up the shaft like a gunshot. Elaine flinched. I grabbed her wrist and pulled her into the crawl space beyond. It was barely 5 feet high, dusty, cramped, with old insulation peeling from the walls, but it was escape. I turned back, just as Harold reached the landing. He stepped onto it slowly, testing the metal with one foot. It groaned sharply, bowing under his weight. Elaine's hand clamped over her mouth. Harold's flashlight clicked on. The beam swept across the crawl space entrance, catching me in its edge. I ducked instinctively, pulling back deeper into the shadows. He spoke in the same steady tone. "You aren't thinking this through. The basement is a dead end. You know that." He didn't move closer. He simply stood on the landing, letting his words sink in. Elaine pressed against me, whispering, "He's lying." "Not necessarily," I murmured. "But we're not staying here." I reached for her hand. "Stay low, keep quiet." We crawled deeper into the space. The narrow passage bent slightly to the right, forcing us to maneuver around old crates stacked haphazardly. Cobwebs brushed across my forearms, though I tried not to think about them. Behind us, Harold's flashlight beam flicked across the metal edges of the opening. Then, a long metallic shriek tore through the air. The landing buckled. Elaine gasped. Harold swore, a rare crack in his composure, as the platform dropped under his weight. Instinctively, I reached back toward the opening, though he was far too high for me to help. But the platform didn't fall completely. It sagged dangerously, suspended by 2 rusted bolts that screamed as they held on. Harold steadied himself, gripping the ladder with one hand, legs dangling over the sagging grate. His flashlight clattered against the walls before dropping 3 floors into the darkness. Elaine whispered, "Leave him. Let's go." But I didn't move. For one frozen second I looked at Harold, half hanging, half clinging, the man who had lied to us, hunted us, terrorized my sister. His eyes found mine through the dark. There was no fear in them, just calculation. Even now, he hauled himself upward, slow but methodical, pulling his weight off the failing platform. His boots found the ladder again. Rung by rung, I turned away. "Come on, Elaine, now." We crawled farther in, until the passage narrowed again, ending at another vertical shaft, a service lift access. The old sliding gate hung open by a few inches. I pushed it aside, the metal screeching softly. Elaine stared down the shaft. "How far is the drop?" "Not far. There's a service floor about 6 feet below. We can jump it." She nodded, though her voice shook. "You go first." I lowered myself through the gap and dropped to the floor below. The landing was solid concrete, colder than the air above. I reached up. "I've got you." Elaine swung her legs through and eased herself down. When she dropped, she landed awkwardly, gripping my shoulder for balance. "You okay?" She nodded. Behind us, the metal grate groaned again in the distance. Harold was still coming. Elaine whispered. "Where now?" I scanned the room. Rows of industrial washers and old electrical conduits, the faint hum of the building's backup generator vibrating through the pipes. "This is the old laundry level," I said. "It connects to the boiler room. From there, There's a service exit. Elaine exhaled shakily, clinging to that small sliver of hope. Then we heard it, a metallic thud above us. Then another, closer each time. Harold had found the access shaft too. Elaine grabbed my arm. He's not giving up. No, I said quietly. He isn't. But it wasn't Harold's persistence that made my stomach drop. It was something else. A second voice drifted through the shaft. Not his. A voice neither of us recognized. And it said something that made Elaine go instantly cold beside me. He's not alone anymore. For a moment neither of us moved. The words bounced down the shaft, like they were wrapped in ice. He's not alone anymore. Elaine pressed closer to me, her breath unsteady. Who was that? I don't know, I whispered, though my stomach tightened with a recognition I didn't want to admit. There was something about the tone, quiet, measured, almost rehearsed, not panicked, not confused. Someone who already knew exactly where we were and why. A heavy clang echoed above us, followed by a slow descending scrape. Someone lowering themselves onto the metal rungs of a secondary ladder we hadn't seen. The rhythm was steady, deliberate, too calm. Elaine grabbed my sleeve. Daniel, please, we have to move. We will, I said, guiding her toward the far wall. But stay quiet. The laundry level stretched out ahead of us in long rows of machinery covered in dust. The overhead lights flickered in uneven intervals from the backup power, just enough to paint the pipes and conduits in long, uncertain shadows. It felt like a forgotten floor, one no one was supposed to see. Behind us, the shaft reverberated with motion. One climber, then another, descending together. I kept a hand on Elaine's back, urging her forward. Stay low. Keep your steps light. We weaved between old washing machines, our shadows bending and shifting across the cracked tile. The air smelled faintly of mildew and hot metal, though the boilers hadn't run in years. Halfway across the room, Elaine whispered, "Do you think he called someone before he came after me?" "Yes," I said quietly. "He didn't expect to do all of this alone. What does he want?" Her voice cracked. "Daniel, what does he want from me?" I didn't answer, not because I didn't want to, but because the truth would slow her down. She stopped suddenly, touching my arm. "No, tell me. I need to know what's going on." I looked at her, really looked at her, my sister, exhausted, terrified, her hair matted with dust from the crawl space, her eyes searching mine for an answer she already feared. "You're the only one left," I said softly. She blinked. Left of what? Before I could answer, a voice drifted from behind us, calm, almost friendly. "Elaine, don't listen to him." We spun around. Harold stood halfway across the room, illuminated by the flickering ceiling light. Dust clung to his suit, streaks of grime across his sleeves. But his posture was steady, collected, as if he had simply walked in from a meeting, and beside him, a man I had never seen, mid-50s cis, trim, wearing a dark coat, and wire-rimmed glasses, the kind that gave him a quiet, academic look. He didn't match the setting at all. He looked like he belonged in a library, not in an underground service floor. Elaine whispered, "Who is that?" Harold answered for me. "Elaine, this is Dr. Renner. He's only here to help." Renner gave a small, polite smile, the kind that wasn't warm at all. "Hello, Elaine. I've been waiting a long time to meet you." Elaine stepped back instinctively. "I don't know you." "Yes," Renner said. "You do, you just don't remember." I moved in front of her. "Don't come any closer." Harold lifted a hand as if calming a skittish animal. "Daniel, this isn't necessary. We just need the file, and Elaine needs to hear the truth." Elaine's grip tightened on my arm. "Daniel, please tell me what's happening." I kept my eyes on Harold and Renner. "They're lying." Renner chuckled. Soft, dismissive, lying. "No, you've simply been sheltered, Elaine's voice rose. Sheltered from what? Harold nodded toward her. Tell her, Daniel. You kept it from her long enough. My jaw tightened. That's not your decision. No, Renner said gently. But it has become ours. The lights flickered again, dimming long enough for the room to fall into momentary shadow. When the lights returned, Renner was a step closer. Elaine staggered back. Stay away from me. I pulled her behind a large industrial washer, forcing us into the narrow space between machines. Keep moving. Harold's voice echoed across the room. Daniel, if you make this difficult... I didn't let him finish. We slipped behind another row of equipment, staying low. My pulse hammered against my ribs with every step. Elaine whispered. What does he mean you kept something from me? Daniel, what file are they talking about? I'll explain soon, I said. But not here. Not with them listening. She grabbed my arm. You're scaring me. I know. A metallic thump sounded from the far side of the room, Harold moving between the machines. Then Renner's voice floated out again. Calm, unhurried. You can't hide down here. I know this floor better than you think. I've been studying this building for years. We kept moving until we reached the far wall, an old maintenance corridor lined with rusting pipes. A red door with a peeling boiler access sign hung crooked on its hinges. Through here, I whispered. I pushed it open, and the hinges shrieked. Elaine flinched. The noise bounced down the corridor like a beacon. Renner called out, Thank you, Daniel. That narrows our search. Elaine's panic surged again. They're going to catch us. No, I said firmly, gripping her shoulders. Listen to me. You're not going with them. Do you understand? Her voice shook. Why? What do they want with me? I looked her in the eyes. Because you're the only surviving witness. She froze. Witness? Witness to what? I swallowed. The audit Dad was conducting before he died wasn't just about missing funds. It was a cover. He stumbled onto a shell company tied to Harold and Renner, and someone else we haven't met yet. She shook her head, but that was years ago. They thought everyone involved was gone, I said softly. Everyone except you. Me? Her voice cracked. I didn't know anything. You did, I said. But you were 14, and they don't know what you remember. Her breathing became uneven. Daniel, what was in my file? Before I could answer, a new voice called down the corridor. Older, cold, determined. Ask him about the night of the power outage. Elaine went pale. Who said that? She whispered. I didn't answer, because I recognized the voice. Elaine grabbed my sleeve. Daniel, who is that? I forced her backward into the boiler room, my pulse pounding. Renner stepped into view behind us, smiling. Harold followed, dusting his sleeves. But the figure emerging behind them, tall, severe, gray hair pulled back, wearing a dark coat, made my blood turn to ice. Elaine whispered, Daniel, why does he look familiar? I swallowed hard. Because you saw him, I said quietly. The night Dad died. Elaine's breath caught in her throat. The man stepped forward, his eyes fixed on her with clinical interest. Hello, Elaine, he said. His voice was the same one from the corridor. Calm, cold, unmistakable. It's time you remembered what you witnessed. Elaine didn't blink. She didn't move. She just stared at the man who stepped fully into the light of the boiler room, his posture straight, his expression controlled, the kind of quiet authority that didn't need volume to command a room. I felt her grip tighten on my sleeve. Her fingers trembled so violently, I worried she might lose her balance. Daniel, she whispered. Who is he? The man smiled faintly, like she'd asked a polite question during a seminar. Elaine knows me, he said. She knew me long before she could understand what I was doing. Stay away from her, I snapped. Harold stepped forward, blocking my path with a small shake of his head. Let's not escalate this, we just need clarity. Elaine's voice cracked. I've never seen you before. I don't know you. The man's gaze softened, but only on the surface. That's the tragedy of it, Elaine. You saw everything. You just don't remember. Elaine stumbled back, until she hit the boiler tank behind her. Daniel, what's happening? Please tell me what he's talking about. I moved in front of her, shielding her from the three men inching into the room. The man clasped his hands behind his back. Before we proceed, it's best she hears the truth. She deserves that much. Don't speak to her, I said. Harold sighed. Daniel, resisting us only makes things harder. You kept the file, fine. But we need her. She's the missing piece. Renner chimed in softly. Let's be reasonable. Elaine, we need to know what you saw the night of the building shut down. The night your father. Don't say it, I snapped. Elaine's voice broke. The night Dad died? The man with the gray hair nodded once. Yes, Elaine shook her head rapidly, her breath quickening. I told you I don't remember anything. I was upstairs. The lights went out. I don't. You weren't upstairs, the man interrupted. You were in the archive room, with me. Until your father walked in. Elaine's knees buckled. She slid downward until she caught herself on a pipe. No, she whispered. That's not right. It is, the man said calmly. Your father found you holding a folder you weren't supposed to see. A folder he didn't even know existed. And when he saw me there with you, his eyes locked onto mine. He understood he'd uncovered something he wasn't meant to find. Elaine covered her mouth. Stop. Stop talking. Renner stepped closer, adopting a soft, patronizing tone. We're not the enemy, Elaine. But you saw well too much. You saw who moved the funds, who changed the ledgers, who signed off on the offshore accounts. You saw who tried to silence your father. And you saw her, Harold added, nodding at the gray-haired man. On the staircase, holding your father's briefcase. Elaine squeezed her eyes shut, shaking her head like she could physically shake loose the memory. No, I was a kid. I don't remember any of that. The gray-haired man's expression didn't change. No pity, no anger, just certainty. You remember enough, he said. Even now your body recognizes my voice. Elaine's breath hitched. Stop. Please stop. I stepped forward, blocking their view of her. That's enough. She isn't going anywhere with you. Renner tilted his head. Daniel, you've had years to prepare for this moment. You hid her. You moved her records. You refiled her guardianship papers. You covered your father's tracks. Admirable work. Truly. But it's over. She's coming with us, Harold added. And you're going to hand over the file. I laughed once under my breath. Short, disbelief tinge. You want the file? Then tell her who he is. I nodded toward the gray-haired man. Tell her his name. Harold opened his mouth, but the man lifted a hand to silence him. I think it's time, he said. Then, turning to Elaine, my name is Walter Keene. Elaine frowned, confusion crossing her features. Keene, my chest tightened. I saw the moment the memory flickered, just a spark behind her eyes. The man nodded gently. Yes, I knew your father very well. We worked together for almost a decade. He trusted me. He let me into his home. He let me guide him through the transition after your mother passed. Elaine whispered. You were at the funeral. Yes, he said. I stood right behind you. A single tear slid down her cheek. And you were, she swallowed hard. You were in our house. In Dad's office. Yes, Elaine's breathing became sharp, uneven. And you? He betrayed us. Keene cut in softly. Not the other way around. Whatever you think you remember. Daniel spun into a story to protect you. Admirable, but misguided. No, I said firmly. She remembers the truth. Elaine pressed the heel of her hand against her forehead. I don't know. Keen took a step closer. Your father put you in danger. You were 14. He dragged you into a conflict he didn't understand. You saw documents you had no business touching. Elaine choked out a sound, something between a sob and a gasp. I didn't know what they were, but you saw them, Keen said softly. And now you're the last one who has. Renner spoke up. We only need to know how much you remember. That's all. Elaine leaned heavily against the boiler, gripping the metal so hard her knuckles whitened. I reached for her, but she flinched, not away from me, but away from everything. Daniel, she whispered. Was I there, that night? Did I see him? My heart ached, because yes, she had. And I'd spent years trying to bury it. You saw him, I said quietly. But you were terrified. Dad told me not to force it. He said, your mind would protect you until you were ready. Elaine stared at the floor, her voice barely audible. I remember someone shouting, a crash, and Dad. He stopped, covering her mouth as a sob tore through her. Keen exhaled slowly. She's remembering. Good. I stepped forward. Stay away from her. Renner's expression hardened. Daniel, you can't protect her anymore. Harold took a step toward us. We're done negotiating. I moved in front of Elaine fully, planting myself between her and the three men. No, I said. You're done. Keen raised an eyebrow. And what exactly do you think you're going to do, Daniel? Fight all three of us? No, I said. But I'm also not the one holding the file. Harold froze. What? I stared him dead in the eye. She is. 3 things happened at once. Elaine gasped softly behind me. Renner tensed, stepping forward, and Keen's expression finally cracked. You didn't, he whispered. I held his gaze. Oh yes, I did. Elaine's hand slid into her jacket pocket where I'd placed the drive. The real drive, not the decoy. And her fingers closed around it with new awareness. Keen inhaled sharply, his composure fracturing. Elaine, he said carefully. Give it to me, right now. Elaine straightened slowly, tears still streaking down her face, but something else had replaced the paralysis. Recognition, and fear, and anger. She met his eyes. I remember you, she whispered. On the stairs. You. Keen stiffened. Elaine's voice broke, raw, fragile, but certain. You were holding Dad's hand. And he wasn't standing. Harold swore quietly. Renner froze. Keen's face finally hardened into something cold and unmasked. Well, he said softly, that complicates things. Elaine's words hung in the boiler room like smoke. Keen's face twisted just for a fraction of a second, before he regained his calm, composed mask. But I saw it, something behind those eyes, the calculation, the cold recognition that we weren't just children anymore, that we weren't defenseless. Harold stepped forward, a flicker of frustration breaking through his usual calm veneer. This isn't the time to argue. Give us the file, and it'll all be easier. Elaine shook her head violently. No, you're not taking anything from me. Keen's lips pressed into a thin line. Childish defiance won't protect you, he said softly, almost coaxing. I've spent years guiding you, protecting the legacy your father tried to hide. I took a half step in front of her. You don't guide anyone. You manipulate them. Renner's voice was quiet but sharp. Daniel, don't underestimate the situation. One misstep and enough, I said. My voice shook, despite my best effort to steady it. She decides, not you. Not him. Not anyone. Elaine swallowed hard, glancing at the folder in her hand, the drive I'd given her earlier. Sweat beaded her forehead, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Daniel, I nodded. It's all yours. You have to decide what happens next. For a moment, the room was silent, except for her ragged breathing and the faint hum of the backup generator. Harold's jaw clenched. Keen's eyes flickered with something unreadable. Even Renner was still, holding his tension like a coiled spring. Elaine's hands shook as she raised the folder. "All these years you lied to protect me," she whispered. Her eyes darted between the three of them. "Dad, he didn't trust you, and now I understand why." Keen stepped forward, slow, deliberate. "Elaine, don't," she cut him off sharply. Her voice had gained an edge that wasn't there before. "I know what you did. I remember the night you were there. The moment Dad fell, you tried to cover it up, and I didn't even know. And now you expect me to just hand it over?" His calm demeanor cracked just slightly. "Elaine, you don't understand." "I understand enough," she said. "I'm not giving you anything. Not now. Not ever." Harold ran a hand over his face. "You're making this harder than it has to be. Think about it. You can walk away. Keep the file safe. Let's not ruin your life further." "I don't care about my life," Elaine shouted, the sound echoing off the concrete walls. "I care about the truth. And the truth is that you, both of you, have been hiding for decades." Renner stepped closer, his voice calm but icy. "Elaine, consider what you're doing. This isn't just a game. People died because of what your father found." Elaine's gaze met mine, and for the first time I saw not fear, but clarity. "I know," she said softly. "And now I have to finish what he started." Keen's eyebrows rose slightly. "You don't know what you're saying." "I do," she said. Her voice shook, but her grip on the folder tightened. "I remember the ledger, the offshore accounts, the signatures, and I know who orchestrated it all. You want this file? You'll have to take it from me. And I'm not afraid anymore." For a long moment, silence fell. The hum of the generator filled the space. Then Harold stepped forward slowly, a predatory smile on his lips. "You'll regret this," he said quietly. Elaine didn't flinch. "Maybe, but at least I won't live with the lies anymore." I could see the tension shift. Keen's controlled composure was cracking. Renner's patience was thinning. And Harold, he was calculating, trying to figure out the next move. Elaine glanced at me. "Daniel, do you trust me?" I nodded. "I do, always." She looked back at them, then stepped back. Harold's voice rose. "Lane, no," she yelled. And this time her voice wasn't fragile. "Step back or you won't get the file at all." The three of them hesitated. I could see Renner's mind working, Keen's calculation faltering, and Harold's patience snapping. Elaine took a slow, deliberate step forward, holding the folder tightly. "I've waited years to understand what happened, and I'm done being protected from it. If you want this, you'll have to take it from me." A flicker of movement. Harold lunged first, quick, confident, but Elaine was faster than anyone expected. She pivoted sharply, backing toward the boiler room door, the folder clutched tightly. I followed her closely, guiding her through the tight space between machines. Renner moved to intercept, but I shoved a crate between him and us. Keen took a step forward, but Elaine swung her arm, letting the folder slide against the floor just out of his reach. "This isn't a game," Harold barked. "No," Elaine said quietly, her voice cutting through the tension. "This is the truth." We reached the maintenance corridor at the far end, the boiler room lights flickering low. The exit was only a few steps away, but it was open, exposing us to the room behind. Keen's voice called softly. "Elaine, don't do this. You'll regret it." "I already regret nothing," she whispered. Not slowing her pace, Harold moved to block the exit. "Hand it over." Elaine stopped, turned, and her voice rang sharp and clear. "I'll hand nothing to anyone who lied to me, and that includes you and you and you." She pointed to each of them. "You've spent decades hiding from the consequences. Now it's my turn to decide." A tense moment passed. They froze. They didn't move. I felt Elaine's grip on my arm tighten. "Daniel," she whispered. "Help me get this out. Let's finish this, I nodded. We will. But we have to be smart. She looked at me, eyes burning with determination, and I knew she was no longer the scared girl I'd carried through the crawl spaces and service shafts. She was the person Dad trusted, even when we didn't fully understand what that meant. Ready? I whispered. Elaine nodded. We took a synchronized step toward the exit. The three of them moved simultaneously, blocking, calculating, waiting. Elaine's hand tightened on the folder. One step closer, she said quietly. And this ends differently than you think. Harold's lips pressed together. Renner's jaw clenched, and Keen's expression hardened into something dark, something I hadn't seen before. I swallowed. Now Elaine. She stepped forward, and everything in the boiler room shifted in an instant. Elaine moved like a storm. Fast, precise, fearless. I followed close behind, guiding her through the narrow corridor, the folder clutched tightly against her chest. Harold lunged first, but she sidestepped, barely touching the wall, and shoved past him. His arm grazed her shoulder, but she kept moving, pulling me along with a force that made my heart pound. Daniel, she whispered, urgency sharp in her voice. Keep up. We reached the end of the corridor, a set of old emergency stairs descending to the basement. The metal steps groaned under our combined weight, but it was nothing compared to the sound of the three men scrambling behind us. Harold's voice called down the stairs, low, warning, and filled with frustration. Elaine, stop. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. She yelled back, her voice echoing through the stairwell. I'm taking control. Keen's footsteps followed, measured, deliberate, like a predator pacing. Elaine, think carefully, he said calmly, almost soothingly. You're risking everything, for a memory that might not even be complete. Renner came next. Faster, his impatience barely masked. Daniel, you've led us into a corner. She's a child. You're endangering her. Elaine stopped mid-step, pressed herself against the railing, and turned her head slightly toward the three of them. I am not a child, she shouted. I'm done being protected. I'm done being lied to. I felt her resolve like a tangible force, solid and electrifying. It gave me strength. I didn't know I had. I followed her down the stairs, one careful step after another, the creaking metal echoing beneath us, masking our urgency. The basement came into view, a cavernous space lined with pipes, machinery, and stacked crates. The emergency lights flickered dimly, casting long, distorted shadows across the concrete floor. It smelled of dust, oil, and old metal, a smell that triggered a flash of memory in Elaine. She hesitated. I remember this place, she whispered, voice trembling. Dad used to bring me here. I didn't need to ask for clarification. She was remembering now, pieces of her past, the night her father had confronted the men we were now running from. Keep moving, I urged softly. We don't have time to linger. The basement offered only one practical exit, a narrow door leading to the back alley behind the building. I could see faint moonlight glimmering through the gap at the bottom. It wasn't much, but it was freedom. Elaine reached it first. She tried the handle. It was locked. I crouched beside her, inspecting the latch. My fingers found the small keyhole. Of course, I muttered. The building had more security than it needed. Elaine's eyes widened. Do you have the key? I nodded. I do. From the time we cleared Dad's office. We can get out, but it has to be quick. I pulled the key from my pocket and inserted it into the lock. The tumblers resisted briefly before sliding into place with a satisfying click. The door swung open, just enough for us to slip through. Moonlight hit Elaine's face, and for the first time in hours, she looked almost alive again, fear tempered by determination. I followed her outside, taking stock of our surroundings. The alley was narrow, littered with trash bins and damp leaves. A faint fog hugged the ground, giving us partial cover from anyone looking for us from the building windows above. "Go," I urged. Taking her hand, we ran, the cold night air biting our skin. The sounds of pursuit were faint now. Harold's and Renner's voices calling behind us, Keen's calm, controlled warnings, but they hadn't reached the alley yet, not fully. Elaine's breathing came in sharp bursts. Where do we go?" "There's a car," I said, glancing at a covered spot near the side exit. "We parked it when we came in." "It's our ride," she nodded, clutching the folder tighter, her knuckles white. "Daniel, do you think they'll come after us?" "Yes," I said quietly. "But right now, they can't. Not if we move fast." The car was a beat-up sedan, old but reliable. I unlocked it, threw the passenger door open for Elaine, and shoved the keys into her hand. She slid in, still trembling, still gripping the folder as if it were the only thing keeping her tethered to the world. I ran around to the driver's side, engine already warm from our earlier arrival. My heart pounded. Every shadow seemed alive. Every distant sound could be them. Elaine leaned back in the seat, finally allowing herself a deep, shaky breath. We're actually getting out?" "Not yet," I said. "But we will, and once we're gone, they can't touch us." I shifted into gear and rolled out of the alley, careful to avoid the streetlight that could expose us. The car shuddered on the uneven asphalt, but it held. Elaine finally let herself look at me. "Daniel, I remember bits now. The ledger, the accounts, Dad's last words." I kept my eyes on the road. "Tell me everything," I said quietly. "We need the full picture." She swallowed. "Dad, he found them. He found the people laundering the money. He tried to confront them. And then, the building, the outage, and I was there. I saw them with him. I don't know why they let me live." A shiver ran down my spine, because they underestimated us. Because they thought I'd keep you hidden. Because they thought fear would make you forget. Elaine's fingers tightened on the folder. "I'm not forgetting anymore, and I'm not scared anymore." I glanced at her. "Good, because if we're going to survive this, you need that courage." She nodded slowly, determination settling over her features. "Daniel, we have to bring them down. All of them." I felt the weight of it. The drive in her hands, the truth in her memory, the reckoning we were about to deliver. "Yes," I said softly. "We will, and they'll never see it coming." The car moved into the quiet streets, fog curling around the headlights, shrouding us from the eyes of those we'd left behind. But deep down, I knew the danger wasn't gone. Not yet. They would find us. They would come for the folder. And Harold, Keen, and Renner. Each of them would not give up without a fight. Elaine leaned back, still clutching the folder. "Daniel, do you think Dad would be proud?" I looked at her, heart tight. "He'd be proud of you. You're finally taking control, and this time, we do it together." A long, tense silence followed, broken only by the hum of the engine and the fog brushing against the windshield. Then Elaine whispered, almost to herself, "It's time they remembered who really holds the truth." I gripped the wheel tighter, and they're about to find out. The night stretched ahead of us, full of uncertainty, danger, and a reckoning that was only just beginning. The fog clung to the streets like a shroud, muffling sound and masking our escape. The folder rested on Elaine's lap, a solid weight that felt heavier than any weapon. It wasn't just paper and files, it was proof, memory, and leverage all wrapped into one, and it was ours. Elaine's eyes were fixed on the road ahead, but her mind was elsewhere. "Daniel, I can't believe this. I kept it hidden all these years, and now it's mine to use." "Yes," I said quietly, "and you have every right. They tried to control us. They tried to scare us into submission. But they forgot one thing. You never forget who you are. Her fingers tightened on the folder. Dad. He would have done the same. He would have protected it. Protected me. But he didn't get the chance to finish. I nodded. Which is why we have to finish it. For him. And for everyone he tried to protect. Elaine's eyes met mine, a spark of fire in them I hadn't seen before. Daniel, they're going to come after us. All of them. Harold, Keen, even Renner. They won't stop until they have the folder. They think it's the only way to survive. I glanced at her. Then we make sure they don't get the chance. The streets were nearly empty at this hour. 2:17 a.m. The perfect time to disappear. We slowed the car for a moment, ducking under a low-hanging streetlight to check our surroundings. Shadows twisted in the corners of alleyways, but there was nothing yet. Elaine swallowed, almost a whisper. Do you think we can really do it? Take them down? I took a deep breath. We have the truth. They don't. And that's all the advantage we need. She exhaled slowly, determination hardening in her jaw. They underestimated me. They underestimated us. That's going to be their biggest mistake. I glanced at the folder again. Every signature, every ledger, every note from Dad, everything that could bring decades of lies into the light was inside. And Elaine was the one who held it. A distant sound cut through the quiet night. The faint roar of an engine. My heart skipped a beat. They're close, I said. Elaine's eyes sharpened. Good. Let them come. They're about to see that we've been awake the whole time. That we've been waiting for this moment. The car turned a corner sharply. Tires skidding slightly over wet pavement. I kept my foot light on the gas, careful to remain unseen. The engine behind us grew louder. A car, black, nondescript, appeared in the fog. Harold, I whispered. Stay calm. We've prepared for this. Elaine's fingers clenched the folder. I'm ready. The black car's headlights cut through the fog, sweeping across ours for a brief moment. I hit the brakes, pulling the car behind a stack of dumpsters. We sat in the shadows, waiting, listening. The engine behind us slowed. A horn honked faintly. Then silence. Elaine exhaled. They're cautious. They know we're dangerous now. Yes, I said quietly. We've leveled the playing field. She looked down at the folder. Everything Dad tried to hide. It's all here, and they can't touch it, not unless they get past me. I placed a hand gently over hers. You're ready, more than you know. Elaine nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. Then let's end this, once and for all. I smiled, faintly, heart tight with adrenaline and fear. Together, we slipped back onto the street, moving slowly to avoid detection. The black car followed at a distance, careful, measuring, but there was no stopping the inevitable. Harold, Keen, and Renner had underestimated us at every turn, and now they were about to learn the cost of that mistake. Elaine guided the car toward the outskirts of the city, winding roads with little traffic. Every turn, every shadow was a calculated risk. She wasn't the scared little girl from the crawl spaces anymore. She was in control. I can see it now, she said quietly. The ledger, the accounts, the truth. They can't undo what's done. They can't rewrite history. I nodded. Exactly. And this time we decide the ending. The black car disappeared momentarily into the fog behind us, but I could hear it shifting, waiting, watching, trying to predict our moves. Elaine's hands gripped the wheel tighter. Daniel, we'll make it. We'll expose them. They'll pay for what they did to Dad, to us, to everyone involved. Yes, I said firmly. They will, but we have to be careful. Precision, patience, timing. That's how we win. She glanced at me, eyes blazing. And when we do, I smiled faintly. When we do, they'll never see it coming. Not Harold, not Keen, not Renner, not anyone. Elaine nodded, her jaw set. Then it's time to bring the truth into the light. The city's edge appeared ahead, dark and silent. The folder rested heavily between us, a constant reminder of everything at stake. The air felt thick with tension, the calm before the storm. I glanced at Elaine. You ready for the confrontation? She met my gaze, unwavering. More than ever. Let them come. We're done running. The fog parted slightly as we reached the main road. Our shadows stretched across the pavement, two figures against a world of lies, deceit, and betrayal. And somewhere behind us, I knew. The men plotting in the shadows, Harold, Keene, and Renner, were about to learn that for every move they made, we were 2 steps ahead. Elaine exhaled sharply, determination shining through exhaustion. Daniel, we finally have control for Dad, for us, for the truth. I reached over, resting a hand on hers. Exactly. And we won't let them take it back. The city lights flickered ahead, and in that moment, I knew the reckoning had begun. The folder was safe. The truth was alive. And Elaine was ready. It was time for justice. Time for the story Dad never got to finish. And this time, no one would stop us.